Chapter 3. There was stunned silence for a moment, but Garad broke it.
"Let us play a game," he said. "Let us pretend that you are right, and Draenor, our entire world, is dying. And yet somehow you and you alone have been granted the ability to lead us to a special new land where this death does not happen. If such a tale were true, it seems to me that you would be better served by simply traveling to this new land with fewer rather than greater numbers. Why do you trek to the north, when winter is barely past, to make such a generous offer to the Frostwolves?"
Garad's voice dripped cynicism. Gul'dan slid his sleeve up, displaying peculiar bracelets and more of his disconcertingly green skin.
"I bear the mark of magic," he said simply. "I speak the truth."
And somehow, Durotan knew that he did not lie. His gaze again wandered to Garona, the warlock's slave. Was she too magical? Did Gul'dan keep her chained not because she was subservient, but because she might be dangerous?
"I spoke earlier of a clan," Gul'dan continued. "It is not a clan into which I was born, but a clan I have founded. I have created it, my horde, and those who have joined it have done so freely and gladly. I do not believe any orc chieftain, no matter how desperate, would order his clan to follow you and forsake his true allegiance." "I do not ask that of them,"
Gul'dan said, his calm voice a contrast to Garad's rising one.
"They keep their chieftains, their customs, even their names. But whereas the clans answer to the chieftains, those chieftains answer to me. We are part of a great whole, and everyone you have spoken with has swallowed this tale down like mother's milk."
Garad sneered openly now. Durotan wondered how long it would be before he violated the Parley banner and tore out Gul'dan's green throat, as he had threatened earlier.
"Not all, but many," Gul'dan said. "Many other clans who are suffering and whose numbers are dwindling. They will follow me to this verdant new land, and they do so without surrendering their clan affiliations, but merely taking on an additional one. They are still Warsong, or Laughing Skull, or Bleeding Hollow, but are also now members of the Horde. My Horde. They follow me, and will go where I lead them, and I will lead them to a world that teems with life." "More than one clan follows you? Warsong, Bleeding Hollow, Laughing Skull?"
Garad seemed incredulous, as well he might. Durotan knew that while orcs sometimes cooperated for a single goal, such as a hunt, they always disbanded when it was accomplished. What Gul'dan was telling them all seemed improbable at best, if not as fanciful as a child's story.
"All but a few," Gul'dan replied. "Some stubborn clans still choose to cling to a world that no longer succours them. Some seem to be barely orcs at all, anointing themselves with the blood of their prey and revelling in decay. We shun these, the Red Walkers, and they will die at some point, mad and in despair. All I ask of you is your loyalty, as we travel together to leave behind a dying husk. Your knowledge, your skills, your strength."
Durotan tried to imagine a huge sea of brown skin, weapons in hand, used not against one another, but against beasts, for food, to share, against the land, to hew shelters and homes. All this in a world of green-leafed trees heavy with ripe fruit, animals strong and fat and healthy, and water fresh and clean. Impulsively, he leaned forward and asked, "Tell me more of this land."
"Durotan!"
Garad's voice cracked like lightning. Blood rose hot in Durotan's face. But after the one outburst, his father's attention was focused not on his presumptuous son, but on the stranger in their camp, even as that stranger smiled slowly at Durotan.
"So, You have come to rescue us, have you? Garrad said. We are Frostwolves, Gul'dan. We do not need your rescue, your horde, your land which is only a promise. Frostfire Ridge has been the home of the Frostwolves for as long as any tale can tell, and it will stay that way.
We honor our traditions, said Gaia, her voice and mien hard. We do not forsake who we are when times grow difficult.
Others may run to you like mewling children, but we will not. We are made of sterner stuff than those who dwell in the softer south.
Gul'dan did not take umbrage at Garrad's contemptuous words. Rather, he regarded Garrad with an expression that was almost sad.
I spoke earlier of orc clans that did not join the horde, he said. They too told me when I approached them that they needed no aid. But the loss of food, of water, of shelter, all that is required to exist, has taken a dreadful toll on them. They have become nomads, roaming from place to place, forced in the end to abandon their homelands. They are shadows of orcs, and they have become so, and suffer, needlessly. We do not suffer, said Garrad. We endure.
He sat back slightly, straightening his large, powerful frame. Durotan knew what that gesture meant. The parley was over.
We will not follow you, green orc.
Gul'dan did not strike Durotan as one who was accustomed to refusal. He wondered if the warlock would summon these mysterious magics he claimed to have at his disposal and break the parley protection by challenging Garrad to the Mak'gora, a battle to the death between two individual orcs. His mother might know the proper way to respond to that. Durotan did not. He had witnessed the Mak'gora only once before. An orc from the Thunderlord clan decided not to cede his prey to the Frostwolves, as had been agreed upon. Instead, he had challenged Gul'dan, who had claimed the beast in question. It had struck Durotan as odd and disruptive. Until that point, the Thunderlords and Frostwolves had been cooperating well for several days. Durotan had even made a friend of sort. His name was Kovogor, and the two were of an age. Kovogor was funny, pleasant, and very good with a throwing axe. When the merged hunting party camped at night, Kovogor taught Durotan how to properly throw the weapon so it would embed itself in the flesh of its target. Gul'dan had won that battle. Durotan recalled his heart slamming against his chest, his blood pumping. He had never felt more alive. There was no time to think, to wonder, when he was in combat himself. But to watch another was to experience something else entirely. Yet when it was done, and Gul'dan had bellowed a Frostwolf victory while standing in blood-soaked snow, Durotan had felt a strange emotion, along with the shared euphoria. He had later recognized that it was a sense of loss. The other orc had been strong and proud, but in the end his pride had been deeper than his strength, and the Thunderlords returned with one less warrior to provide their clan with food. And there was now a coldness between the clans, one that made it impossible for Durotan to even say farewell to Kovogor. But it seemed there would be no Mak'gora today. Gul'dan merely sighed and shook his head.
Perhaps you do not believe this, Garrad, son of Durkosh, but I sorrow at what I know will come to pass. The Frostwolves are proud and noble, but not even you can stand against what is to come. Your people will discover that pride and nobility mean little when there is no food to eat, or water fit to drink, or air good to breathe.
He reached into the folds of his robe and drew out a knife. Roars of fury tore from every orc's throat at the betrayal. "Hold!" Gaia's voice was strong as she leapt to position herself between Gul'dan, who wisely froze in mid-motion, and anyone who would do him harm. What is she doing? Durotan wondered. But like the others, he stayed where he was, although his body cried out to leap atop Gul'dan. Gaia's eyes scanned the crowd. "Gul'dan came under the banner of parley," she shouted. "What he is doing is part of the rite. We will let him continue, whatever we think of him." Her lip curled, and she took a step back, allowing Gul'dan to finish drawing the wicked-looking blade. Garrad had obviously been prepared for this moment. and watched as Gul'dan inclined his head and extended his hand, palm upward, the knife balanced atop it.
I offer the test of the blade to you, who hold my life in your hand, Gul'dan said. It is as sharp as the wolf's tooth, and I abide by its decision.
Durotan watched with rapt attention as his father's enormous fingers that had once throttled a Talbuk whose charge had knocked Garad's spear from his hand, closed over the knife. Firelight glittered on the long blade. Garad held it up for all to see, then drew it across the back of his lower arm. Reddish-black blood welled up in its wake. Garad let it drip to the earth.
You came with a blade that was sharp and keen. A blade that could take my life, yet you did not use it, he said. This is true, Parley. I accept this blade as an acknowledgment of this, and I have shed my own blood as a sign that you will have safe passage from this place.
His voice had been strong, carrying clearly on the cold night air, heavy with import. He let the words linger there for a moment.
Now, get out.
Durotan again tensed, as did Orgrim beside him. That Garad had behaved with such open contempt told his son how deeply offended the Frostwolf chieftain had been by Gul'dan's proposal. Surely Gul'dan would demand a chance to repudiate such discourtesy. But again, the green orc merely inclined his head in acceptance. Planting his grisly staff firmly, he got to his feet, his unnaturally glowing eyes regarding the silent, hostile gathering for a moment before he moved forward. He tugged at the chain that ended at the female orc thing's neck, and she rose with supple grace. As she passed Durotan, she met his gaze openly. Her eyes were fierce and beautiful.
What are you? And what are you to Gul'dan?
Durotan supposed he would never know. The frost wolves parted for the warlock, not out of respect, Durotan realized, but out of a desire to avoid physical contact with him in any manner, as if touching someone who was so aligned with death could harm them.
Well, well,
Orgrim said, with a grunt, as the pair went to their waiting wolves.
And to think we had expected a boring feast to celebrate the hunt. I think my mother would have been happy to make a feast of him, Durotan said.
He watched as the darkness swallowed up the green orc and his slave, then turned to look at Drek'tar. His skin crawled. The blind shaman was still as a stone. His head was cocked to one side, as if he were straining to listen to something. Everyone else's attention was still fixed on the departing interloper, and so Durotan was certain that he was the only one who saw tears dampen the fold of fabric that covered Drek'tar's sightless eyes.